Hello, my name is Robert Higginbotham, and in this video I'll be following and expanding on Assess Tutorial 6. The objective of this tutorial is to produce a 3D model for a bar stool in 3ds Max. The model must adhere to the provided dimensions, have 4 identical legs, and be centered in the scene at 0, 0, 0 with a pivot point that sits perfectly centered on the model at the point or its lowest vertex. Once again, for this video, I'll begin by following along with the guided tutorial to produce the asset. Then I'll save a copy out and move on to adding a little bit extra flair and make some modifications. It's also worth noting that for this model I've got a max try count of 750, which isn't a lot, but it should be more than enough to get a nice result. So first thing I'll do is jump into customize and make sure that the units are set up. We're in centimeters and we're in centimeters, and I'm going to go into the home grid over here and I'm just getting up the grid count just to give myself that little bit more space to work in. Now we're going to create a box and we're going to use this as a size reference for the model. And we're going to set the size at 40 for the length, 40 for the width, and 70 for the height. I'm just going to hit F4 to give us edged faces. We're also going to jump up here, if it'll let me, there we go, and we'll rename this Ref, because that's our reference. Okay. So the next thing that we'll do is hit F on the keyboard, jump into front view. I'm going to turn this out of wireframe here to default shading, and also going to deselect box for a moment. I'm going to hit W on the keyboard and just make sure that this box is centered first of all. Then we're going to create a plane, if we can just find that, there we are, and drag that out over the box. And we're going to get the parameters, the length and the width of the plane, from a provided reference. I'll just pull that up now. Now that we've got this open, we're going to take the Barstool silhouette, and we are going to find the properties of this. Go into details, and we can see we've got 65.9 by 372. So we're going to come over here and we're going to go 65.9 by 372. Now we're going to hit W on the keyboard and just make sure that this is centered in the scene. And then we're going to hit R and we're going to scale this down until it's around about the same size as the box that we've created. That seems good to me. So what I'm going to do now is hit P on the keyboard, so I'm going to perspective, and then we're going to jump this back by about a meter just to give us some space. We'll hide the reference block for a moment because we're going to be setting up the texture on this plane. I'm also going to come down to this arrow and just get my preferred layout set up for 3ds Max. So for the texture, we're going to hit M on the keyboard and switch over to the slate material editor. Going to get a PBR metallic roughness, and then out of the base colour we're going to go general bitmap and then locate the bitmap. So the one that we'll be using is the Barstool silhouette here. Now just click on the material and we'll apply this to the object, and we can see that that's applied to the plane there. And we'll close this out. Now, a setting that's guided in the tutorial that is recommended to look at is with the little plus icon up here. We hit right mouse button and we go to configure viewports, and mine is, but we want to make sure that all of these are set to 4K and that we've got anti-aliasing at high quality, just so that we're getting the most out of the scene if your computer can handle it. Hit apply and OK. So now we're going to right click on the plane and we're going to go to object properties, and we're going to freeze it so that we don't accidentally select it. We're going to turn on back face cull so we can see through the back of it if we're modelling from that side, and we are going to untick show frozen in grey, and we're going to hit OK. So now we can't accidentally click on this, and if we rotate around the back we can see through it. So now we're going to work on the legs. I'm going to hit F on the keyboard to go to front view. We're going to come up here into shapes and we're going to take the line, and we're going to position this at the bottom center, and we're going to start drawing in the general shape of the leg. Straight up here. I can always adjust this in a little bit. So about there, center point to around about maybe there, and then hold shift on the keyboard and take it just off center, and we'll right click to deselect that. Now just right click again to let go a line. I'm going to jump over to the modifiers panel, set the line thickness to 2 centimeters, and we're going to enable that in viewport so we can see the spline we've created. I'm also going to lower the number of sides from 12 to 6 because 6 will be plenty enough, and hit F4 on the keyboard to give us the edged faces. I'm not sure why that had turned itself off again. So now that we've got this, we're going to use the vertex selection here. And because we're working with a line in the modifier list instead of an edit poly, selecting the vertices is the different vertices of the spline, not the vertices of the polygons that we're seeing. And we can untick enable in viewport so that we can see these lines again. And we're going to work through each one. We're going to right click it, and we're going to switch this from corner to Bezier. And Bezier gives us this nice curve. If I enable this in viewport again, you can see the extra topology that's given us. So I'm just going to untick that, and we're going to use that just to smooth out the curve on these legs. Might have to just move this vertex a little, but this is why I wasn't too worried about messing with that, setting it up in the first place, because we can always adjust all of this. I feel like this needs to be a bit further to the right just to straighten the leg up, and then maybe bring this one over a touch. Just adjust these extra handles that we have. Now I'm going to do the same with this one, Bezier. Okay, moving on to the next one. move on to the next. Bezier. I'll set the next one up as well because these are going to relate to each other and the way that they work here. Just undo a little bit of this, tighten this back in, because I realised that when I moved this vertex up I needed to move this one at the same time to keep these perfectly aligned, because we held shift to drag this out, so we know that these two vertices are perfectly aligned with each other. There we go, that's much more like it. Yeah, I like the look of that. Let's see what that looks like in viewport. I'll set this awful purple away to grey. There we go. Yeah, that's not so bad. So what we'll do, we get a nice view on this. We could actually just use the interpolation here and lower the steps just to bring the amount of topology used down. It's probably good. Let's see what one's like. Yeah, that's a bit too far, but two, we still maintain the silhouette. So next we want to look at creating the footrest. For that, we're going to jump over into top view, so T on the keyboard, and I'm going to use the leg that we have created as a guide out from the center point. We're going to use circle and center that in and just pull that out until it's around about the correct position. Say maybe about there. We're then going to hit F on the keyboard and bring that up to the correct position, so maybe about there, fairly central on the reference. I'm going to hit P to go into perspective, and we want this just minorly intersecting, so we'll go to the details panel and where's the diameter? Here we go, radius, it's radial for this one, so just bring that down, say 14.1, what about 14.5? Feels a bit too much, so maybe 14.4, just so that we're minorly intersecting. I think more than that it'll look like it's floating. Yeah, fairly happy with that. Let's make that grey too. So next we want to work on the seat. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to take the front view, so F on the keyboard. I'm going to hit Q to deselect any kind of movement or transform tools and select everything that we have. W again to move back into movement. And I want to move this just a little bit lower so that we're working from the base of the seat. And we're going to have to do a little bit of guesswork and judging by eye, because we don't have any perfect side profile reference images for this. So now we're going to go into line, creating a new spline here. We're going to uncheck enable in viewport for this, and we're going to click in the center and holding shift come straight out to more or less where the side of the bar stool is. I'm going to come in just a little bit lower here, just a bit before, because we're going to add the details for these here. So so the seat comes out a little bit further, so we're going to come just about there, then bring that up, then one more up like this, maybe a bit more, just to bring it in line with this one down here. Something like that, and then straight back into the center. And we'll right click to deselect. So now that we have that created, we can right click just to deselect line again. Again, go into the modifier panel, and with the line selected, we're going to search for the lathe modifier. And this is going to come out broken to begin with, but we can come in here to axis, and we'll just bring that axis central in the scene. Round about there. Maybe yeah, that seems aligned pretty well to me. And if I hit P to go into perspective, we can see that everything's a little bit weird at the moment, but if we just flip the normals, we can see the object as we'd like to. Again, I'm just going to switch this into a grey colour. Then we're going to hit F and go back into front view. We'll close this because we don't need to mess with that anymore. And in line, I'm going to show end result here so that I can actually see what's going on. Confuse myself for a moment there. And in vertex, we can now come in and add a bit more detail to these edges. So like we were before, we're just going to switch from corner to bezier. And we can use these gizmos just to align, just to straighten things up and give us some curvature here. This one we'll start to work on now. So now what we'll do, we'll just hit P on the keyboard to go into perspective so we can get a better look at this model. And it's quite a lot of topology that's been added on the sides, and if I just hit 7 on the keyboard, we can already see that we're we've got a lot going on here. So for the interpolation, I'm just going to knock that down to 1 to reduce what we have going on. And then in lathe, I'm going to drop the segments from 16 down to 12. And that still keeps a solid silhouette without all the unnecessary topology. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to take a save out of here. Go save as. And you can see I've already had an attempt at this Barstool, just to quickly follow along with the video before I record myself and to understand what's being taught. So for this, I'm just going to call this Barstool for now, and I can always come back in and change the name of this as I create further iterations, and I'll hit save. Before I move on too much further as well, I'm going to just come up here and start naming these different parts, just so that I can keep track of what we have. I've chose leg 001 because we're going to be creating more instances of the leg, so that'll help us keep track of what is what, basically. So now the next thing that we'll be doing is going into the seat, and we're going to right click and convert this to an editable poly, because we need to undo one of the issues that you tend to get with the lathe modifier, and that is if I hit T to go into top view, go into vertex, and we zoom right in, you can see that we have this very small hole at the top, and that'll be the same at the bottom as well. So I'm going to hit Q so we don't accidentally select anything and move things, and just select all of those vertices in the centre. I'm then going to go to the settings at weld, and at 0.1 centimeters we can already see that that connects the one at the top, and 0.1 centimeters will be far too great a distance between the top and the bottom of the seat itself. And as you can see, before 252 vertices, after 230, so we're removing 22 vertices there, just by welding those closed. And we don't want open holes on the model either. Hit P on the keyboard again for perspective view. Just get a little bit nicer of an angle of this. So yeah, we're looking good. We'll just have a quick look at the bottom now, so we can see that that's closed up too. So we're going to go T for the top view into polys, and we're going to get rid of 3/4 of this model, because we're going to be mirroring it. So now we're going to go into the line tool for the leg there, and select this end vertex, and we want to bring this in line with the centre of the seat. I'm just going to double check actually. If I zoom back out of here, I'm going to Control Z to back before I deleted this, and just select this model as a whole, because I didn't actually check, just make sure I'm on the seat there, I didn't actually check that this was perfectly centred. Aha! We're not perfectly centred, I don't believe, but the axis for this is off to the side, so I'm going to effect pivot only and centre to object, and that means that on the X and the Y I can now align that perfectly, and just for my own sanity's sake, for if I need to move this, we'll turn on the snaps, snaps by vertex, and just undo that. Effect pivot only, and I'm just going to bring that down. If it'll let me. There. So that's the centre point. That should just make my life easier in a little bit. So we want to keep the Z position as it is. Now we're going to go back into top view and delete away those polygons once again. And now we can see that we're perfectly centered with that. Now we can take the leg, take the vertex at the end, turn off snaps for a start. We'll bring that over here. There we are. And now I want to go into the pivot point of this leg. Effect pivot only. We'll turn those snaps back on. Hit P to go into perspective mode. And I'll just bring this up to this vertex up here. And now we've got a central point. Now, that's not a perfect way of doing it because we've had to move this by eye, even though we have aligned and guided up with the center of this. But I'll follow along with the tutorial, and we can revisit that with a later model, I'm sure. So now we will go back into top view and we'll just make sure that we've got the line selected, E on the keyboard, and we're going to turn on angle snaps, not percentage scaling, angle snaps. Turn off the standard snaps, and I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees, which will put this smack bang in the centre of this segment of seat. Now, the way that the tutorial guides me to do the seat here, I'll just switch back into my move tool, is to go into tools, and we're looking for array, and then we can use this array to rotate 90 degrees here with a count of 4, and we can preview this, and this gives us a whole seat. Now instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the seat and editable poly, I'm going to add to the top of the stack a symmetry, and we want on the X and the Y, and we're going to flip for both, I believe. No, Z. There we go. Got there eventually. So the X and the Z for this particular model. And that has given us the exact same result. Only this time, if I add the edit poly modifier to the top, and we take one of those sides, I believe that would have been one, let's just double check against where the leg is, so this definitely would have been one. We can see that all of this is welded together already for us. So just for now I'm going to delete that edit poly and just keep the symmetry on the top of the stack there, and I will hide this model for a moment. In fact, no, I'll hold Alt and press X just so that we can see through it. Now that we can see through the seat, I'm going to take the leg and go back into vertex. We already have the vertex at the end selected, so I'm going to go into top view and switch from view over to local, and then I'm going to move this back again so that they don't, the legs don't all meet in the centre when we duplicate those. I think something like that looks good for a gap in the centre somewhere there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do with this is take the line, add the symmetry. Just switch into perspective view here to see what's going on. That's okay. We'll just use the x-axis for this one. And up here we shall just clone the object as a copy, leg 002. And I'll go into top view, into rotate with the snaps on. And we're just going to rotate by 90 degrees. And then we can go back into leg 1, add an edit poly to the top of the stack, and then if I can find it, attach, leg 2, attach, and now I can just rename this to legs, plural. And there we have it. So now I'm going to select the seat again, and Alt and X on the keyboard to turn off X-ray. And I'm going to go to the legs, and hit P on the keyboard to go into perspective view. I'm going to hit Q so that I'm not moving things by accident, and what we want to be looking at now is removing the n-gons from the ends of these. So I could of course select both vertices and connect them, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to use the cut tool. There we go, much nicer. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to come back in and remove these edges from the bottom. Are they... Oh, so it's just kept all the ones I've just placed, so I'll just Alt and deselect those, and we'll just make sure that I've not got any more up there. So these edges that we've just added at the bottom, I'm going to backspace those out temporarily. I'm going to hit F on the keyboard to go front view, and again with edges selected I'm going to take the bottoms of all of these legs, and I'm going to deselect with Alt these that are actually on the sides, because we're only interested in what's at the bottoms. And I'm going to add a small chamfer to this, just to give this a little bit more realism, so maybe 0.5. Let's see what that looks like from the sides. That's not so bad. Maybe even 0.4. Yeah, I feel like that's better. And then hit the tick on that. I'm then going to come in with the cut tool and just cut those n-gons again. So now that we're at this stage, we're going to look at attaching all of this together. I'm just going to come in one last time just to see that, yeah, the seat is actually hovering there. So I'm going to take the seat and just bring it back down a touch. and that'll be fine. Perspective view again, and I'll just convert this to editable poly, and then go to attach. We're going to attach the footrest and the legs, attach, and this is all one model now. I'll just come back over here where we've got the model called seat, and we'll change that to SM_Barstool, just so that that's already set up and in place. And we'll do the same over here too. There we go. So the first thing you'll probably notice that now, because we used the seat to attach this model together, the pivot point is now this centre vertex at the bottom of the seat, which is centred but no use to us in terms of placing a model. So we're going to go over to Effect Pivot Only, and we're going to use the Snaps toggle. I'm going to bring it down here and attach to the bottom vertex of this model there. So now we know that the Z axis is perfectly aligned to the bottom of the model, and we know that the model we've created is already perfectly centered in the scene. So we can just right click the X and the Y to bring the pivot point perfectly centered on the model, and we can turn off Effect Pivot Only and right click the Z axis, and we'll bring the model onto the ground just like that. The next thing we want to look at doing is setting up the smoothing groups. So we're going to come over to the editable poly, and we're going to start off, let me just turn this snap toggle off, start off with elements, and we'll take the footrest. In fact, no we're not, we're going to go into poly, so we're going to select everything to begin with, and we're going to clear all, because we're going to set all this up ourselves. So in element mode, I'm going to select the footrest, hold Control, and select Polygon to keep the selection. I am going to go to the smoothing groups, and I'm going to give that a group of 1. I'm then going to take the legs. I'm actually going to select by angle 45 degrees, and that should... no, we'll just go by element again. So we'll select the element, and then we will Control select Polygon, and again I'm going to set those to smoothing group 1, except I'm going to, yeah, we're in by angle, take the ends of these and we'll do the same to the bottoms. Let's just make sure, no, we need to select these without the biangle. And once we've got these, we're going to set them to smoothing group 2. We'll remove group 1 and select group 2. And now the shadows react as they should with those. So that's the legs. For the seat, that'll be quick and easy. We'll turn biangle back on and select the top here, and Control and select top again. And we want that to be 1 smoothing group, so we'll select 1, and we'll take the next piece down. We want that to be 2. And the next piece down, that can be 1 again, and the next piece down, that can be, oh, the next piece down, that can be 2. Does that encompass the bottom as well? I think what I'm best doing here now is if I shrink the selection, take 2 off that and we'll call that 1. Yeah, I think that looks better because it wouldn't be completely smooth all the way around there. And that's the smoothing grip set up, nice, quick and easy. And now that we've got that up to that stage, we can press Shift Q on the keyboard to render. I'll just drag this so that we can see it. And we've got a fairly good representation of the bar stool. Let's get a better view on this. Shift Q, there we go. And there we go, a good render of the bar stool. And that concludes the guidance on this tutorial. I've sort of veered away from the guidance in places to improve on the model where I see fit. But for me personally, the only other thing I'd like to add to this, besides optimizing it, would be to raise the seat a little more just to round it off, because it's a bit flat as a bar stool. And I believe we'll be tackling optimization in the next tutorial, so I won't go too heavily into that now. We'll just focus on raising this bar stool a bit. So I think what I'm going to do for that is select by angle, and I'll just put 5 degrees for now, just so that I can select only this top face. Then I am going to inset that. Oh, where's me thing gone? Down here. Inset that by maybe 3. And then if I go to front view, I'm just going to raise it up a touch. I don't think that's doing what I want it to do. Why do we have... Ah, that's why. We need to hit the tick. Let's try that again. Front view, I'm just going to raise this up a touch. And then back into perspective. I think we'll inset one more time. This time maybe by 4. Maybe 5. Yeah, let's try 5. That seems good to me. F to get the front view. We'll just raise that again. And then P to go back into perspective to get a better look at this. And I feel like, if I just select off here, I feel like that looks better, just having that little bit extra topology on the top just to round it off. Beyond that, I'd be happy to call that done and ready to work on optimization, because there's a lot that we could do. Let's say especially with these details here, we could probably get away with losing some of these edges just to optimize the model and still maintain that silhouette. Yeah, so that concludes tutorial 6, Assess tutorial 6. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you in the next one. Nebula Skull.